Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're heading into a steep Yorkshire valley to uncover the story of a town built on grit, literally saved by hippies, and yeah, maybe even haunted by a few ghosts. Let's talk about Hebden Bridge. Seriously, how do you even begin to describe a place like this? People have called it the greatest town in Europe. It's celebrated as the lesbian capital of the UK, and get this, it was even named one of the funkiest places on the entire planet. That's some pretty high praise, right? Especially for a town that started out as just a gritty industrial workhorse. So you gotta wonder, how did that happen? How does a remote valley town in West Yorkshire get all these incredible titles? Well, to figure it out, we've got to peel back the layers of its identity. And we're going to start with the very foundation, the stones and the water that literally built this place. All right, let's get into it. Long before Hebden Bridge was known for being funky, it was an absolute powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution. And its story, it isn't just tucked away in some old history book. No, it's carved right into the landscape, into its totally unique and honestly, almost impossible-looking architecture. Yeah, back in the 19th century, this place had a nickname, Trouser Town. I'm not kidding. The mills here were world leaders in making something called fustian. It's this really heavy-duty cotton fabric, kind of like corduroy. They were cranking out millions of pairs of trousers for workers all across the British Empire. This tiny little valley, it was a giant in the global textile trade. But here's the thing. The town's geography, which was absolutely perfect for water-powered mills, created a massive problem when it came to housing. The valley floor was just jammed packed with mills, the canal, the river. There was simply no flat land left to build homes for the thousands of workers pouring in. So what do? Well, the Victorian engineers came up with a pretty radical solution. They built these, the famous double-decker houses. And I want to be clear, these are not just apartments or flats. We're talking about two completely separate, self-contained houses, one built literally on top of the other, just clinging to the side of the hill. It's wild. Okay, so this really breaks down how this architectural marvel actually works. Check it out. The family living in what they call the underdwelling would have their front door on the lower street. But the family living right above them, their front door opened onto a completely different street, way higher up the hill. It's such a clever, practical solution, and it led to this great local saying that in Hebden Bridge, you can walk out of your bedroom and onto your neighbor's roof. But then, the industry that built this whole town, it just collapsed. In the middle of the 20th century, the mills went silent. The houses emptied out. Trouser Town was basically left to die. And honestly, it came dangerously close to being completely wiped off the map. This timeline really shows that dramatic fall, and then its totally unlikely rebirth. I mean, by the 1960s, the place was nearly derelict. There were actual plans to demolish entire streets to make way for a new motorway. But that decay created a strange kind of opportunity. All these sturdy stone cottages in this stunning landscape were suddenly dirt cheap. And that became a magnet for artists, writers, hippies, anyone looking for an alternative way of life. So this new wave of people, the locals called them off-Comdens, which is just a great term for newcomers. They're the ones who physically saved the town's unique architecture from the bulldozers. They planted the seeds for that bohemian, fiercely independent culture that Hebden Bridge is so famous for today. But of course, as the song lyric kind of hints at, that whole transformation wasn't exactly seamless. It created some tension, especially when the arrival of the chattering classes started pushing property prices way up. All right, so we've got the industry and the hippies. But let's go a layer deeper. Because beneath all that grit and creative spirit, there is a much older, more mysterious history. The moors and valleys all around Hebden Bridge are absolutely steeped in folklore and some pretty chilling tales. Okay, get this. Back in the 18th century, the hills nearby were home to a gang called the Cragvale Coiners. These guys were counterfeiters led by this charismatic figure, King David Hartley. Their whole operation was to take real gold coins, carefully shave tiny slivers of gold off the edges, then melt down all those shavings to forge brand new illegal coins. And they got so good at it, their operation became so massive that it nearly brought down the entire British economy. No joke. And believe me, the legends only get stranger from there. If you go up to the ancient churchyard in Heptonstall, which looks right down over the town, you'll find this one mysterious grave. It's covered with a massive stone slab, and it's bound with iron straps. Why? Well, local lore says it belongs to a 19th century vampire, and that the body had to be dug up and reburied like this to stop a plague from sweeping through the village. And the whole landscape is just riddled with these spooky tales. You've got the ancient coffin path, a steep, grim road where pallbearers had to haul the dead up to that hilltop graveyard. People say on quiet nights you can still hear the ghostly clink of packhorse hooves. And then there are stories of a ghostly blue hand that supposedly terrified schoolchildren back in the 70s. Oh, and a ghostly nun who's said to haunt the original bridge from the 1500s. It's a lot. So that brings us to the final and maybe the most important layer of this place, its people. Because at the end of the day, this town is really defined by these powerful human stories. Stories of resilience, rebellion, and incredible creativity that are etched into every single stone here. This brooding, beautiful landscape, it was basically the soul of the poet laureate Ted Hughes. He was born right near here. He and his wife, the incredible poet Sylvia Plath, lived in the area for a time, and you can just feel its stark, powerful atmosphere in their writing. Today, Sylvia Plath's grave, up in that same Hebden churchyard, is a major site of pilgrimage for literature lovers from all over the world. And there's this fierce spirit of independence that has just defined this town for centuries. You see it in 1870, when workers literally pooled their pennies to buy their own mill, helping to pioneer the whole cooperative movement. You see it with local women like Lavina Saltonstall, who were arrested fighting for the right to vote. You see it in the 20th century, when the town fought a landmark legal battle for justice after the horrific asbestos tragedy at Acker Mill. And you see that exact same spirit today, like in 2015, when volunteer flood angels from the community rallied to rescue and rebuild after catastrophic flood. So, when you look at it all, from this industrial workhorse to a bohemian sanctuary, Hebden Bridge really proves that a town's identity is never just one thing. It's a story, and it's a story that's always being rewritten. Every single layer of its past, the grit, the ghosts, the rebels, it all just provides the foundation for whatever comes next.